Let's use the least toxic means we can of getting the product we need. You know, this creates a lot more problems than the others, than the other one you can get from elsewhere. So what I'm saying that if you just weigh the risks, this has a higher risk than oil we can get from elsewhere.
Okay, broad questions I'm going to ask you will hold. Specific questions, the Enbridge issue, this gentleman here.
What did they say the need for the expansion of that pipe was, or did they?
Well, they're claiming it's needed in this country, but basically that's another thing they're not being very honest about. They want to ship it overseas to make additional money. That's their need.
What is Wisconsin getting from allowing the pipeline to go through it? What's the advantage to Wisconsin?
Well, if you think politically, you know, who are current politicians supporting? Who are they getting the money from? Follow the money trail. Now, we don't get much out of this. What it does is support, well, as I mentioned a couple of brothers' names, Koch brothers. They're very connected to this state. It all gets integrated, I think, in terms of how these companies act and who their buddies are and supporting each other. It is, as you're going to probably hear more about in the future, corporations over people. Because those people get their interest, they buy their influence as far as I'm concerned. So that's it. The companies connected with this, the Canadian government has bought into this lock, stock, and barrel, and certainly our state government here, under current control, has bought into this lock, stock, and barrel too. They're supporting their buddies. I mean, there's no reason that the Department of Natural Resources couldn't ask for a proper environmental impact statement saying, you know, look, you're making a major change here. What we did for environmental impact statements years ago when we knew different things than we know now. It's basically political and money.
So, in other words, they're not renting the land.
They're paying very little in taxes. The state gets hardly anything out of it. It's not a direct connection, no.
Okay, I think I'm going to hold questions here. We'll come back. You'll have plenty of time to ask questions. But I just want to make sure that both our speakers get a chance to present, and then you can ask both of them the same kind of questions that you might have. So let me introduce my next speaker. I'm proud to have Amar Kaleka, Democratic candidate in Wisconsin's 1st Congressional District. You probably know who represents that currently, Paul Ryan. He is a community activist who has worked against hate crimes affecting Sikh and East Asian groups. He is a filmmaker. He won an Emmy Award for his direction of a short film, Jacob's Turn, in 2010, about a 4-year-old with Down syndrome who plays T-ball for the first time. He's also a former teacher of literature and sciences at high school level.
No, I played at Marquette as well.
I'm not teaching. You were
Oh,
teaching.
teaching. Oh, sorry. I
It's
went
okay.
back to baseball.
I know baseball's more fun. Right?
Yeah. I taught at Milwaukee Public Schools, middle school and high school, and middle school astronomy and geology.
Interesting. All right, and you were born in, I was trying to guess how to say this, Peshawar?
Punjab.
In Punjab, right, but it said Peshawar, I don't know.
Patiala.
Patiala. Punjab.
It means
India.
5 rivers. Punjab and the Patiala means the flower on the 5 rivers. Very similar to Milwaukee, the place where the rivers meet.
And that's in India, and his family came to the U.S. when he was a child. Let's give a big hand for Amar Kaleka.
I could do a little bit of a political introduction to myself, but I also want to approach the question you asked because it's a crucial one. She said, what does Wisconsin gain from this? What the other side will constantly tell you, whether it's the Keystone, whether it's in Kalamazoo, whether it's wherever it is, they're always going to take it from an economic stance and go, we gain some jobs. The fact of the matter is, most of these jobs are temporary. They only last the range of the contract. It takes you 4 years to do this, 8 years. What was the proposal on this? They said something like an 8-year in order to increase it. Yeah, in
Oh, no, it'll be a year or two.
Year or two, so you get those jobs for a year or two.
Pumping stations.
Pipelines generally run themselves. You actually lose all those jobs too. And you get these layoffs and you get this like temporary, so.
It'll be cleanup jobs though.
Exactly. Don, you're relentless. I like that. There will be cleanup jobs because we know that the environmental impact statements will always say that this is the risk, this is the risk, this is the risk, this is the risk, and we've seen it with our own eyes. So let me tell you a little bit about myself before I tell you about my stances here, which I think you guys can already guess. I came to politics in an unusual way. I'm an Emmy Award-winning filmmaker, 3 Emmys. We just happened to pick one up last year. And all those Emmys were about cause-driven documentaries. I love documentaries. This seems like a documentary. If you approach it from the tribes, oh my God, what are they battling alone? You know, it's a Goliath, David and Goliath battle. So I was a filmmaker, everything was going right. And then 2 years ago, my father was murdered at the Sikh temple in Wisconsin. And that, I mean, it takes us, it's hard to even tell you the emotional impact that it's done to our family, or to Oak Creek, or to Wisconsin, or to the nation. But a hate crime like that, where a neo-Nazi, and that means he's a white extremist, walks into a church on a Sunday morning and starts shooting and killing people with an assault-type 9mm gun. He's a former Army sergeant. He has an earplug in his ear because he's going to go after it, right? And he has mental illness out the wazoo, and nobody's handled him or taken care of him. No veterans benefits that help. You know, how could they when you keep cutting them, right? This gentleman, and I've accepted that he's done this, and I've searched the forgiveness to call him a gentleman. He fell upon hard economic times. He fell on times that were caused by an administration, not in the president's office, an administration in the House of Representatives. The president does not hold the power of the purse. It is given to 435, actually 535 when you include the Senate, representatives elected by every state, every district. So the power of the purse passing that budget from 1933 to 97, for 64 years, 62 out of the 64 years the House of Representatives was run by the Democrats. That's through the greatest generation. That is through your guys' lifetime. The last 16 out of the 20 years, it's been run by the right. It's been run by people who believe in corporatism, trickle-down economics, getting at the environment at the cost of the future for our children, reinvesting our Social Security, doing oblong, God knows what things with the budget, not even passing a budget for some years, arguing over it. This is what we've had. In the last Congress, they passed the least amount of bills ever in the history of the United States of America. And we still let them go there. And one of the representatives who leads that Congress comes from our district. So when my father was murdered, I took everything, it took me everything to look at it objectively. And I saw the veteran benefits being cut. I saw the economic instability. That forced me to go to Washington, D.C. back and forth for 2 straight years to talk about hate crimes and gun legislation. Gun responsibility, not gun control, normal gun responsibility that 85% of us agree with. Universal background checks. You buy a gun, you get a background check. Simple as that, right? They couldn't even pass that thing. Nothing could move. So I said, if you cannot change laws when people are being murdered constantly, and you're walking up there and telling them, crying out of your eyes, you can't change the laws, change the lawmakers. So I was asked to run by the Republicans for state assembly, because they didn't really realize where my politics stood. which speaks a lot about them. So I think of the Republicans, and I always say this, the Republicans are just the corporate class. They're just the business class of our society. They're not a political doctrine. We are a political doctrine. We have values as Democrats. And I have to say us as Democrats, because I'm saying, I speak for a group now, right? Us as Democrats, we have values. I am my brother's keeper. I want equality and justice. I want a fair system. I want everybody to have a fair shake at life so they can live the American dream. My father lived the American dream, and it was being attacked. And I said, okay, if we cannot change the laws, we'll change the lawmakers. So I was asked to run. I said no to the Republicans. I said no to a state assembly seat. I said I will not leave my job as a director of a film company to run for a state assembly seat. Not saying that that's not important. It's really hard economically. It's really hard when you have a gigantic amount of student loans for getting a graduate degree. It's hard to do that with your children being young. I have a 3-year-old and I have a 5-week-old baby. And for me to leave them for politics, you know how grinding this is, right? So I said I will do it for something higher, and then I got a knock on the door and somebody asked me. So here I am running for Congress in your district, and that's how I got here. Where do I stand on the issues? I have one mission, and I think all of you guys have one mission right now, and that is to fix our economy. And fix it from every angle that it's being attacked at. And it's being attacked. For example, Enbridge, where did they come from? Canada. Canada. The Keystone comes from Canada. Right? This is an international issue, but it's costing us how much money to clean up Kalamazoo? They're not doing it because it costs too much, because there was no insurance policy that could handle that kind of destruction. When everybody said the percentage chance of it there being destruction was there. So the things that I stand on in economics, I'll just say them really briefly, and then I'll get to the environment. One is minimum wage. I stand strongly that the minimum wage should be raised, and I don't have the number I have is $11.47. Where do I get that number? Over 7 years, if we raise it to $11.47, anybody who works 40 hours will be out of poverty. 40 hours a week, 52 weeks. I'm not saying vacation time, I'm not doing anything else. I'm saying if they work every week for 40 hours, $11.47 is the mathematics on how they get out of poverty. There are 48 million?
46 million.
46 million people in poverty right now in America, while 400 Americans make half of the nation's income. 400, I can easily fit in the store, the co-op, right? They make half of the nation's income while 46 million people are impoverished in the first world nation that leads the world. I mean, we rank in the third world nation category. We're in like 37th behind certain islands. So minimum wage would effectively end that if you get it to where I want it. Now, I'm a small business owner, so I can do some things. I can offer a small business tax cut. We can offer something called a staggered minimum wage, which is a minimum wage based on your employee size. Walmart, the number one employer, pays their people around $8 an hour. It used to be GM. GM paid their people $52 an hour. Yay, right? Yay for unions. Yay for battling for a fair pay, right? Walmart guys don't have that power anymore. $8 an hour, and what ends up happening economically is this person who pays $8, gets paid $8 an hour, we give them government assistance. That government assistance pays for these products, so we're in fact subsidizing Walmart. Holy moly. You know, the federal minimum wage was enacted to fix this solution, to make sure that nobody could do this to us. But they did it to us. How did they do it to us? With certain supporters who back certain political action committees and put their people in office. One of them being my appointment, Paul Ryan. Now, that's minimum wage, that's where I stand. Immigration reform is the next topic that can fix our economy. I am an immigrant. I was born in India. You just heard the name of the village, Patiala. Patiala, Punjab. It's been a civilization for over 3,000 years. I was born there. I fled there because the Indian government started attacking our people for wearing a turban and a beard. We ended up in Wisconsin. We ended up in Germantown. Then ended up in the inner city. Anyways, long story short, immigration is not a problem. It is a blessing of the great United States of America. John F. Kennedy would agree. It is the bloodline. It is why you are here. It is why all of us are here. We said to the world, we will stand as a great democracy built on justice, freedom, equality, redemption, all these amazing things. We will let you practice your religion. But when you come here, you will take an oath to be an American. I took that oath, I became naturalized. At 18 years old age, I took a test. My 85-year-old grandma also took a test. And it was a beautiful ceremony. It was a beautiful ceremony. So immigration right now is a humanitarian crisis. The United Nations, did you hear the news today? The United Nations came in and said, these people that are crossing this border are now refugees. They're having political turmoil that you, in fact, America, have seen. Everybody knows that the political turmoil and the gangs and the drug lords in Mexico created a problem and people are fleeing. You cannot send those people back. So the issues that I stand strongly on for immigration reform is, A, there has to be immigration reform. Right now, Cantor was dropped from his primary because the other guy said, look at what he's standing on immigration. He's compromising. And the Tea Party came in and just cut his legs off and got him out of there even in a primary. I stand firmly that there needs to be immigration reform. There needs to be a DREAM Act, an Enlist Act, a Skills Act, but something else that I'm offering to the whole nation is what I call the 448 Act. 448. If she comes from Amsterdam to study here, and she does everything, and she's on a student visa, and she's in our role already, she happens to take a seat from an American citizen, though she pays extra. So when she's done and she comes to the greatest country in the world for education, because we are, that's what we can sell. Everybody can come to us for education. We have great professors like Don. We have great professors like Chuck, right? Everybody can come here. If she does that for 4 years, gets her degree, we give her a 4-year option. Do you want to go back to your country or do you want to live here as a resident? In your 4 years, you follow the rules. After 8 years, we'll give you a clear path to apply for naturalization. It's simple. It's World War I and II again. This time, we're not drafting forcibly. We're asking. Bring your brightest and your best, who want to flee the governments that they have, but want to study with the best. And if they want to stay, they're invited to stay. And they can build small businesses. They don't need to get married into the culture or into a citizenship. They don't, that's a solution. That's the 448 Act. It's my gift, not as it's something I've been thinking about for such a long time as an immigrant, as a solution. So that takes us to the third point that we need to talk about today, which is environment and economy. We all need to comprehend that fossil fuels and the way that we have been burning are not economical. There are many developed world nations that do things like invest heavily in solar, invest into wind, invest into clean coal, invest into a number of things that create a better turnaround. Now we have some differences in our countries. The biggest difference in America is we have to get from place to place, and it's a big land. There's no other country like ours, like in terms of, you've driven it, right? It is wide. And we do have to truck a lot. And we do, but we have this miraculous thing called one of the best train systems in the world. And it was built at a time when people wanted to invest in infrastructure. Where did that time go? This was the same time we were building high schools, universities. We were building our university system. We've lost that time because people don't want to invest in the great American public anymore. They say private people will lead us out. Last I checked, private people gouge the government in corporate taxes. One thing that I would firmly do is I would make it so that every corporation, if you sell your watch in Tokyo, and it is trademarked and branded by the United States of America, and our courts uphold your brand, you will pay taxes to America. That currently is not the situation. They will hold offshore tax money. They will hold it there and not bring it in so they don't get taxed. Every other developed world nation does this, up to the tune of almost 10%, 9%, because you're using tariffs, you're using waterways, you're using everything that the national government protects. And when we get back to environment, a lot of this battle that Don just illustrated is that battle. The great American people versus the private people who want to make money on it and build jobs for this great American public. We have to make sure that they are honest about what they do. They're upfront. They tell everybody there's this risk and this is what could happen, and there is a legitimate vote. Right now, our current politicians are not doing that. And if I think almost all of you would agree, if we could swap out the 435, 300 of them, we'd be in a good position. You know, this is the time to change over 17 seats. We change over 17 seats. President Barack Obama's next 2 years are very progressive, and they protect the environment, and they take us down a road that we needed to make a decision on, just like we needed to do in Eisenhower's time. Now, I talk about Eisenhower, right? All of these great presidents were supported by Congress, Senate, and they moved. And we need to make a choice. We can't be on the fence anymore. We need to make a choice. And I think, raise your hand right now if you think global warming is a myth. Okay, so we got to start. So you would say, at data analysis, 96% of us, or 90% of us, don't believe that. So if that is the voice of the people, that is the voice of the people, but we need to make a choice, right? So with that, I will close up by saying, and my advisor, Dr. Hudson, please say hi to Dr. Stephen Hudson and Lori Knapp. We have an amazing team with our congressional campaign, almost all our volunteers. These two are amazing volunteers. They both have graduate degrees, and Dr. Stephen Hudson teaches at Carroll, and I've been blessed with a lot of great volunteers. I say, right now, we have to find a way to support the EPA and environmental agencies, people who are working to stand strong for the environment, because we can't let that slip off the ballot. You can't let people talk about economics without talking about environment, okay? So I'm winding down with that, and now I'm gonna let Chuck, oh, thank you, Chuck.